We'll go to our agenda item first. Today we are going to cover the initiation process group, and also we will have some part of our planning process as well. So remember the planning when we were talking about that one earlier last week. Planning is actually pretty big process group. It has about total about 24 processes. We will not cover all of them today. We will cover some processes of that one. I think about 5 or 6 of them for planning process group, and the initiation is the one that we have as of now. And then we will have some of the work that we have to do. So I was asking earlier, which is basically our third item in our project, in our agenda item today, that anybody has already started working on your project and how is it going. I know brother Faisal actually shared some of his thoughts on that one, but and Faisal, if you want to start, we can start from you. We'll just briefly just tell us what exactly have you found so far.
There are two Faisals, so I'm assuming that me, Faisal Y, or Faisal Z.
There is one Faisal who actually shared it, the other Faisal who did not.
It's you, not Faisal Y. Go for it, buddy.
So I just shared with you. I just put. Sorry, I'm on the road, so if you get some noise from the back, so I just took your template, I fed into the ChatGPT, and I got the results of each and every one. Right now, I cannot share the Google Sheet. As far as the if you have access to the Google Sheet I shared, you can portray that portray that on your screen. Then I can talk through. But I went through all the questions you have said. That Faisal, what's the problem statement? What's the documentation plan? What's the communication plan? And each aspect of that, I just created one single worksheet, and in that I just went through all your pointers or all your prompts for every aspect. And I think that's just like I didn't go into the sub details of cost details and everything, but at a higher level, I provided all the data. I mean, in fact, I was looking for your feedback. If you will probably discuss one of the projects and get us the feedback that does it suffice to cover this much in one document rather than creating that many docs, right? So
I did not get a chance to have a look at all the details that the document you shared, but this is smart. And I always say that if you have a technology and the tools available, there is absolutely nothing wrong in using it. So that's perfectly okay. As long as you have your concepts very clear, exactly what needs to be done. So you use whatever tool is at your disposal, and then you use that one, and then you can create one. So that's perfectly okay. Anybody else has any projects? Or another thing is that what are the different type of the projects that people have been choosing? What Faisal, can you share with us that what project exactly are you saying?
no, so what I did is I did the one related to. So if you I wish you, sorry, I'll probably reshare once I'm back home near my laptop. But what I did is being part of the IT team, I did one network security requirement assessment where, where I did that we have a requirement of network and security related stuff upgrade, right? So I started with that project. Then I gave a prompt and got a collaboration tool for the team, right? And that's also one project I did, and so those were the two main. And I think there was one more which I just gave a prompt.
That's fine. Let's not go. I just want to make sure that we give everyone a little bit of a chance to speak as well. So if each one of you can just say your name of the project, what Crux is, like literally in one sentence, what your project does, and what's the biggest challenge so far you have seen. Anybody else has worked on any of the project?
I can mention one thing that we made a team, myself, Munir, Adar, and Hafiz. So we are thinking of working on the project that MCF is currently doing, which is the HARP for feeding feeding and providing some shelter to the homeless. So we started with that. I think we're going to go more with more discussions Abdul Qadir has done this project before live, right? So we thought we can use his expertise and then put up a actual project proposal and what it takes and follow the guidelines over here, and then come up with the plan and do all the required process.
Correct. That's good. I think that's good enough. Faisal, you have your hands up.
Yes, we also created a team, and it's a project that we started here at the MCF as well, under the umbrella there, and we went through all of the questions and classified based on the processes, and I believe we made a very good progress, and we will present whenever the opportunity is given.
Sure. Okay. Who else? Anybody else want to share? Any other group?
This is Wahab. I just started to work on a construction project. So that's the Folsom Dam dikes raised for the flood protection, but still it's not completed. Like I'm working on that.
Okay, that's fine. Good. Thank you.
Can you please check if there are any more people waiting? Looks like Munir is not able to get in.
I am constantly checking.
Yeah. So.
Yep, I see a few people are again. Okay.
Gulbhai, I think you can make one of us the
co-host,
moderator, co-host, and so that way you are not interrupted while your session, and we can include. So maybe make other Faisal he's the technology guru here. Maybe.
Okay.
Sorry, I volunteer you.
Sure.
All right. Okay, let's get started, because I just wanted to make sure that we have the people actually can join in the meantime while we are talking about it. So today, as I mentioned, that our focus is going to be just on two major process groups: initiation and planning. We'll start with the initiation and then we'll go into the planning phase. Okay. Again, this is I just reminder that this is the group, the book that we are reviewing. Anybody who did not get a chance to get hold of the books, I actually shared the two books again, that the people who were left, who were not able to actually download it earlier. So I shared it again. If you need access, just send me a request and I'll provide you the access, and then I will remove that one eventually.
Brother Gul, this is Khalid. I did send you two requests to access the files, and I still could not access it.
Send it to me again, because I do remember giving you access of that one.
Okay, I'll send it again. Thank you.
Okay. All right. The next one is, so initiation group that we have is basically, it has only two processes: develop initial project charter and identify stakeholders. And identifying this, the stakeholders is going to be a process which requires a lot of due diligence as well, and then understand what are the things that are needed for this, who are going to be the people who are impacted. But before that, how would you know that who are the people who are going to be impacted? So what we do is that we identify the needs of the project, create a feasibility study, creating a product description if there is a project, and then at the end we are going to create a project charter. And what project charter does is basically authorize you when you think of a project. Charter, think authority of the project manager, who's going to be doing what, and basically it provides you a framework that you are going to start working on this. That's the project charter that you have. Okay.
Brother, I'm just changing devices. If you can let me in, please.
Yeah, sure. All right. So the project charter that we have, what exactly does it do is it provides you a direct link between the project and the strategic objectives of the organization. If you remember in our last discussion, we were talking about there are things, for example, the feasibility study has to be done, the business objectives have to be identified, strategic objectives of the organizations are there. So all those things are basically your business objectives, and that are going to be translated into your project charter. Brother just mentioned the network security. So if you have a certain network security policies to be implemented at your organization, and that is basically your project, that you have to make sure that all these network security and everything is implemented. That's basically based on your project charter has to be reflecting that information as well. So that's basically the first thing that we do for the project charter. It creates a formal record of the project. So what exactly does is, that's why it is part of the initiation process. That's the first document that you produce and say, okay, now formally we can kick off this project. Even though there are other things as well that are required before you actually kick off the project, but project charter is one of them. That's the starting point of that. Any questions so far on the project charter, or any confusion?
Just
No.
a quick question. So this is about the project that we were supposed to work on as well. I started looking at some templates of how to put together these documents, and I see that there's, you're defining a project charter now, but there's also templates for project charter document on PMP's website.
Mm-hmm.
Are they a good reference to take and use for this project, or is that going overboard?
Sometime it depends on where exactly are you finding what project, what template you're using. I always see that the more information you have in the beginning of the project, the better it is. But at the same time, don't go with just that, okay, I'm going to have everything done in my project charter. So always remember, don't let the perfection come in the way of completion. So project charter is basically your first formal project record. It may not have all the details, it may not have complete scope defined, but at least it will have some sort of details of the project, which will have like an outer boundary of the project. So I always consider a project charter as, for example, if you're building a house. So when you are planning to build a house, that is your project charter when you have to do. But what exactly do you define in that one? So at least you define the boundary of the house, and you say that I want to build a house. This is the boundary. This is the piece of land where I have to buy that, and I have to build a house. And then at a higher level, I want to make it a 3-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom house, which should have a living room, these 3 bathrooms, and then 3 bedrooms as well. And then you can also define it should have a backyard as well. So that's like a very high level thing. So mostly you will see, yeah, that's pretty much what the house consists of. But the details of the houses are there. But then you can start putting in some more and more details in there. So we can talk about the specific templates that you're talking about, but not necessarily project charter has to be very, very detailed. Normally, I always prefer a project charter to be just not more than 2 or 3 pages. That's it.
But the goal, quick question. Suppose, right, the project you are working on, it's just not your complete project, but is in collaboration with somebody, right? There's also is a more like a combined project.
Mhm.
So in that case, from your charter, do you also have to put the rules and boundaries from your other organization who you're doing in collaboration with, or you just focus on your
Hold that thought.
boundaries?
Good, very good question. Hold that thought. That's the second part of our initiation process. So I'll come to that one. I'll answer that question right there. Okay. All right. So when we are actually building a project charter, these are, so one of the things always remember throughout this training, I will use a term called ITTO here, which is input, tools and technologies, output. So just remember that whenever I use the term ITTO, that is basically ITTO. And this diagram that I'm showing right now, this is one of the key item that you will see throughout these processes. that every single process should have an ITTO. And then for that, each one of those ITTO, you will have to remember them as well, that which um, project process has what input, what is the tools and techniques, and what are the outputs. It seems like it's very difficult to remember all of them. So people use, for example, the flashcards and things like that to remember that one. And I'll share you with you some of those techniques towards the end of the training. But in general, that you just need to think about it, that what are the things, for example, developing a project charter, what are the documents that you would need? So you need the business document, the business use cases that you have, the benefit or the strategic documents that your organization have. You have some certain type of agreements. Brother Khalid just mentioned that if you're working on a project that has a collaboration with another project, so you need to have that kind of document as well. What is the collaboration that is needed? Enterprise environmental factors that we discussed in our last class as well. Overall, the enterprise-wise, what are the things, what are the tools that we have available? Then what are the processes that are already defined for that one? So all these gonna be used as the input for that one. What we are building in the charter, the tools and techniques we are using expert judgment. That's for sure, that your subject matter experts are going to be very key over here. Data gathering and brainstorming that you will do, focus groups, interviews. You will be asking questions from the people that what exactly would it take for me to build a house? Then you would need to talk about it, that oh yeah, my house would need plumbing as well, my house would need electrical wiring. So you would know all those more details. That's expert judgment. At the same time, you will be interviewing, you will be asking people those questions. Then interpersonal skills and team skills, which means whenever you have a project that you're building, I'm again taking the example of building a house. When you are doing it, you would need a lot of people. Different groups are going to be combining together, and you will need to think about it, that how do I talk to each one of them, or how one team is collaborating with the other team as well. So those are the things that are needed over here. Facilitation, meeting management, that's required, and the meetings are also going to be done. So these are all the tools and techniques you will be using. At the end, what exactly is output of that one is the one document that you will be producing as a project charter. And then you will have a lot of assumptions, because if you are building a charter, and always remember that if any charter, any document you build, and you have certain assumptions for that one. So you need to document each one of those assumptions and make sure that these assumptions are revalidated throughout the projects as well. If any of those assumptions turn out to be false or true, or they are not actually exactly the way you were thinking, that will basically change your project charter and the other details as well, depending on at what stage you find those assumptions. So you will keep assumptions log right at the beginning of the project. Okay. Now let's go to the second part of that one. So Brother Khadir asked a very good question, that if you have a project that is collaborating with you, so the answer is that the other project and the people working on that project, they will become your stakeholders. So one of the second process of the initiation process group is that you have to identify the stakeholders, and then you have to do the stakeholders management. The stakeholder management planning is the process to identify the people, groups, organizations that could impact or be impacted by the project. This is as per the PMI definition. I go one step more onto that one. I identify not only the people, organizations, and the that could impact or be impacted by the project, but also the other projects itself. So for example, you have a security project that is going on, and you have certain other development projects are going on as well. So these are the two different projects. Because of your security implementation, that may impact your development project as well. That may add more scope to that one. So that, to me, that also is considered as the impacted stakeholder, that project itself. So that's one of, in other words, everyone who's working on that project will be impacted as well. So all of them will become your stakeholders. Brother Khalid, did that answer your question?
Yes, I have a one follow-up question. Just whether Abid just mentioned, right? For example, we are doing this project for organizing a homeless shelter program.
Mhm.
So in this case, I understand we are working with different organizations to do this project, but uh, the result is right, servicing the homeless. Do they also become the stakeholders, or are they because they are the end result or output of the project? So do we consider them also as a stakeholder or no?
So just look at the first bullet I have mentioned. Identify the people, groups, or organizations. Now, you need to think about it whether they are the people, there's a group of people, or there are organizations. So heart is one of your organizations that is going to be impacted. Homeless people that you are trying to provide shelter to are the end users for this whole project. So they are your stakeholders as well.
Got
And
it.
then
Got
any
it.
other group that is impacted, that is interacting with you. For example, MCF itself is an organization that
One
is,
of the state. Yeah.
so they are also one of the stakeholders. So you have to identify all of them as a stakeholder.
Thank you. I got it. Thank you.
Right. And then one of the biggest challenge that I have always seen in my projects, all of the projects, is the second bullet. Analyze stakeholder expectations and their impact on the project. So every single stakeholder you identify, and you will see you have to document what their expectation is. How do you do that? Any idea? Okay, I'll tell you. What we do is that practically we meet with each one of those stakeholders and we ask them what exactly is your expectation out of this project. What is the contribution you can make to this project? What are the things that can be done that will make it easy for you to participate in this project? And what is output expected out of this project from you? And then the last but not the least is that what is your red line? For example, you can say, I cannot stand this project, or I cannot even participate in this project if it does not have X number of things. So you have to have those. That's the minimum expectation from that stakeholders. So I always document all the basic uh, the mandatory requirements, mandatory expectations from all the stakeholders, their conditions, and then I go by, okay, these are the things that are absolutely necessary features that you want to have in this project. What are the other things that are good to have, but even if they are not there, you can still live with this? That's I always call wish list. That for example, we are building a house. I'll say, yep, absolutely. This one needs to have a backyard, needs to have rooms, everything, Wi-Fi, state of the art, everything. And it's good to have if we have a swimming pool as well in the house. Yeah, that's good. But even if we don't have a swimming pool, still that project will be considered as complete. But if the one of the stakeholders says, no, I cannot live without a swimming pool, it means what? You have to have all the swimming pool in that one. That's gonna become your mandatory requirement. And one do you, and I'll tell you what is the absolute challenge I have always in all of my projects, and that is to manage the stakeholder expectations, because every stakeholder will come up with their own expectations for the project. So for one person's wish list may become the mandatory requirement of the other stakeholders. So that is something that you, as a project manager, literally you have to juggle all those balls in the air and make sure that you have documented it. And that's why it is one of the most important tasks you have to do when you are actually writing your charter, identifying stakeholders, and listing down what their stakeholder expectations are.
I have a question on this. In the same document, do you also prioritize the stakeholders? Who is
Stakeholders,
the most important and the least? Do you
yes,
do them like that?
stakeholders are normally stakeholders. However, there you do have, as a project, you have some of the, if you remember that during our last meeting, we discussed, and I showed you one example I called, there is something called RACI chart. We will study that one as well later on in this training phase. That's called RACI. That's RACI chart is basically required, then accountable, then we have the third one is consulted, and the last one is informed. So if you identify your stakeholders based on that one, that who are the ones that are accountable, who are the stakeholders that are required for this project, and who are the ones are being consulted and informed. So if we have anyone who's just consulted and informed, it means that they have less priority in the project. So we don't really identify from the priority 1, 2, 3, 4. We identify by the RACI chart that whether this stakeholder is required or this stakeholder is just good to know, that just keep me in the loop. So those are the type of the things. For example, if you have an event that is happening at MCF, that you are doing it, you need to think about it, that for that event you need to identify how many parking spots we need. So that is a required thing. You might have to consult the other people as well, that how do we do it, but there are certain people who are responsible to do the parking spots and everything arrangement. They are the ones, that is the group that is required to do this one. And then the person in charge for that group is the one who's accountable for that, and so is the overall MCF as an organization. But then the team who's responsible for the food, for example, or the interior decoration, they just need to be informed where to park and when to park. They don't need to be We don't need to really bring them outside and say, hey, even though you are cooking the food, but help us or let us know how to do this parking, how to solve the parking issues and all that as well. That is none of their they're going to be users of that one, but they're not really going to be the decision maker in that one. Sarah, did I answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. You did. I have one more. So do we also need to take stakeholders' approvals?
You do need to have a stakeholder. Once we write down the stakeholder expectations, you do need to get it approved, that just to make sure that you got their expectations right. So most of the time what happens that when you are writing the stakeholder expectations, you may write it down something and then you think of that, yeah, this is what I thought that the stakeholder is asking for. And when you go to that stakeholder later on towards the end of the project or middle of the project, and you say, okay, these were your expectations, we met all of them, and then stakeholder said, no, you did not meet actually half of my expectations. So then
so is there a document that we need to present to the stakeholders for them to approve?
Correct. So your project charter will have a section where you will have a stakeholder expectations. So that's why that should be your part of your project charter, that you should create a stakeholder expectations, write it down, all the expectations from all the stakeholders, and make sure that they do sign off on that one. That is very important.
So one common document for all the stakeholders, or one specific?
That's a good question. So in some cases, if this is, that's exactly where your political and your team management skills will be very handy. In some cases, you may or may not required. There is no hard and fast rule for this one. You need to have stakeholder expectations document created, documented, and have a sign off from each one of the stakeholders. That's mandatory. That's absolutely necessary. Whether you can share the other stakeholders' expectations with all of them as one document or not, That's project manager's discretion. Sometimes you do that, and sometimes you can think of it, okay, or the other stakeholders, some of the stakeholders may say that these are my expectations, but I don't want you to make it public yet, which is okay. That happens. So we have certain documents that or the certain expectations of the stakeholder that may or may not be all public, but at least between you and the stakeholder there has to be a document that has to be written, or at least an email that should say, yes, I approve these expectations that I have. Okay. All right. The third bullet is the develop management strategies for effectively engaging stakeholders in project decisions and execution. How do we do that? We discussed it briefly last time. Anybody remember last week's session?
We hold interview sessions, brainstorming
Yes.
sessions.
One of the things I mentioned, and that was the project governance. So the project governance will have this part. How are we engaging the stakeholders? For example, in case there is a new request, an additional scope is coming in, who's going to be responsible for that? Who would make a decision? Yes, this needs to be added to our project. We talked about one of the example is that uh, a person writing or an organization creating a software application, and then later for healthcare, and later on finding out, oh, by the way, we missed some of all of it, or maybe some of the very basic HIPAA requirement. That would basically change your scope of the work. And can you do that at that time? Who's going to make that decision? Who's going to decide that what?
Isn't that like usually a program manager or somebody who is sitting on the top, who's monitoring these things, are the ones who are actually governing these things, or the actually the decision makers, not the governing. You may have a governing governance, but the decision makers are somebody else, right?
Right. So you use two words. One is that the decision makers. So we have to define in our project governance who are going to be the decision makers, who are the people who will be deciding it. In certain projects, most of the projects that we do at the government level, we define a steering committee. So steering committee is the one that consists of our core committee who will be responsible to do the decisions. Not necessarily they are the subject matter experts, not necessarily they are the ones who will be working down in the trenches and actually making project happen, but they are the ones who are the decision makers. They're looking at everything. They're looking at the project budget, they're looking at the scope, they're looking at the market expectations, and then they are making the decision whether we should go with this strategy or that strategy. And they may or may not include the executives. I always prefer that the steering committee has to be a middle core committee. They should not have even the executives in there, because the executives, they trump everything. They say that we this is my decision and this is how we're going to go with, and that basically nullifies the whole concept of steering committee, because that's one person making a decision. So the steering committee as a committee, they make the decisions, and then they present the options to the executives. That's one of the things that's how I do most of my projects, but there are a number of ways you can do it as well. So as you mentioned, Brother Abid, that the program manager or the project managers, they may or may not be the subject matter expert for that area. So that's why they should be part of the decision making process, but that's not going to be just one person making that decision. So that's why we defined the governing council, which is basically that consists of either a steering committee. We in one of my projects we called it a coalition of the willing, the people, the core people who are creating a coalition, and they are the ones who are actually willing to improve the project overall. So that's, you can name differently as well, different names, but in general it's going to be the governing council who will decide what to do. So how to engage the stakeholders is that one. You sometimes you have to engage all the stakeholders at the same time. Sometimes you just have to go one by one to each one of those stakeholders and then negotiate, renegotiate on your project decisions as well. So for example, one of the stakeholders says that I need to have a swimming pool in my house. That's an absolutely mandatory requirement. And then later on, you find out that if I have a swimming pool, I won't have enough big enough backyard. And then most of the people are in the house, they want to have a backyard, they don't care about the swimming pool. Then you can go back to that stakeholder and say, can you compromise on your absolutely necessary to good to have? Or maybe instead of having a very big swimming pool, can you live with a smaller swimming pool or a smaller backyard? So that's a process of your negotiating and renegotiating, going back to that. So that's how you will be engaging your stakeholders. So your stakeholder management includes that how effectively you will be engaging the stakeholders. Got it? Okay, then we're gonna come to, again, ITTO for stakeholders. What are the inputs of that one? Project charter we created. And then again, this project charter that we created, that again, identifying the stakeholders will still be more, that can become part of the project charter. So I always create a project charter, and then whenever we identify the stakeholders and their expectations, I add that one to the project charter. So that's a one document that can have both the overall authorization of the project and the stakeholder list as well. Okay. So we have again the same, the rest of the things are pretty much the same that we have. The question right now over here is that the item number 3 in inputs, the project management plan. Did we talk about this one before? We did not. So project management plan is the one basically that will be considered as input, but this is a project management plan is going to be a living document throughout the initiation process. So when we actually start defining how are we going to be engaging the stakeholders, that's going to be part of the project management plan. How are we going to be doing creating a RACI chart? That's called the communication management plan in that one. With all those things are going to be part of project management. So we will start adding those plans into the project management plan, and that will become your overall complete project plan eventually. Yes, brother, you have a hands up, Nasser?
Yeah, brother, good. I was wondering, like if you need like approvals for, like, definitely like any project will require some approvals, like legal maybe, or for security reasons, or let's say you're building something, you need city like ordinance, somebody who understands that. But these people like do not work under your supervision as a program manager. Is there an entity under the project, like a group or something that deals with these things, and you can involve it under your project somehow in a plan or something?
So that's called a matrix organization. When you have an organization where you are working on a project, you need some certain type of an approvals, and those approvals are given by the city, not by you, not by your organization. So you have to deal with the city as well, and they are not working under your organization. So first of all, they will become what? What is their role gonna be with the project?
Stakeholders.
Stakeholder, exactly. So they will become a stakeholder. Second is that when you actually, this is gonna be one of your requirement to get a permit from a city, for example. So you need to how to apply that one, what are the requirements they have, who's gonna be responsible to provide to take care of those requirements as well. And then somebody has to follow up with that stakeholder and make sure that they fulfill all their requirements, their expectations. So that's going to be in all the matrix organizations or matrix project that we have. We will have those kind of requirements that you will identify them as a stakeholder. You will identify them as a mandatory, what we call it in our project schedule. Later on, we will study that one. It's called critical path. The critical path is the one that can impact the overall completion of your project. So your project cannot proceed without a certain permit, and you will put that permit as on the critical path of the project. and then you can proceed with the rest of the activities. So those are the things that you need to do, and you have to identify them as required, and then the person who's going to be actually working on that one, that person is going to be accountable for this, and then they are not going to be in just consulted or informed, because that particular requirement is going to be required permit, for example. So that's how you do it.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. So then you have the other project documents. Now, there are a number of inputs we have identified in this one. For example, project documents is change log. Why do we have a change log while we are just creating a project charter? Any idea?
Scope creep.
We are just creating a project charter. We just created a project charter.
Document any, I think if the document in.
So the question was that why do we have a change log if we are just we just created a project charter, and now we are identifying the stakeholders?
Is it because we want to have a provision if anything needs to be changed, that this is how under these circumstances this can be allowed?
So
isn't the project charter a two-way communication anyways? I mean, it's an agreement, right? So you're going to go back and forth and things will change and evolve over time. Is that just to document those changes?
Makes sense. Brother Khalid, you have your hands up.
To log in and track decisions earlier on from the initiations of the project.
Yeah. So Sohaib also mentioned, and these two are exactly the points that you want to make sure that any decision that has been made in the project charter that change the scope of the original project charter that we created, that defines, when we were defining the boundary and we looked at the stakeholder expectations for our building a house, and somebody said that I need to have a swimming pool that has to be at least this much big, and we don't have enough land, so we probably have to buy additional piece of land just to put the swimming pool in there. So that changes the scope of our project charter as well, even though still we are building the house, but then now we are saying we need to have an additional item that is needed. So that's changing your original project charter that we were trying to build in the beginning. And
So,
then, yes.
So my understanding was right when we talked about this, when there is a change, then that pretty much redefines the project, and the project is not valid with the terms which was initially started. So this isn't a new project now we're talking, then we are talking about the change.
So when we are actually, right now we are identifying the stakeholders, and we are managing their expectations. So when we do the stakeholder and managing their expectations, in the beginning, we still have the house to be built. But we just saying that one of the stakeholders said that I need to have a swimming pool that will require additional land. So we haven't actually started the project. And so at this stage, even though we are tracking the change, why? Because we want to make sure that if somebody else come back to me tomorrow and say, didn't we in the beginning decided that it's going to be a 4-bedroom house or build only in a 5,000 square foot lot, and then you say, yeah, but then we needed extra lot for swimming pool. So that's going to be, and then they'll ask you why, and then you'll say, Brother Khadir actually needed a swimming pool. So now we have that recorded as a change. So that's why this is going to be a change that is from the scope. So just to track the scope creep, as Brother Faisal mentioned, we need to make sure that any of the decisions that have been made, they're documented and they are tracked. Because what happens right now in the beginning, when you are building a project, you are starting a project, but you don't know what are the things that will change, and it may impact your budget, your cost, and your timeline. And then you will come back and then later on say, yeah, I had that all of those things actually placed, but again, that has costed me additional X amount of money or extra time or both. So that's why it is very important that you track that one.
So the change log will have all your time impact on the time and your budget implication, everything. If you want this change, these are the additional time, resources, and the budget will be all captured in your change log.
That
And
is
this is at the initial phase or the planning phase, but that way we know if you do this, this is the original project, but if you deviate, these are all the extra things which will impact the project. Is that
correct. But
correct understanding?
right now, just remember that their change log is going to be a constant document that you will maintain it over the period of the life cycle of the project. So
Okay.
change log at the project charter level, and while we are identifying the stakeholders, is much smaller. You haven't done any kind of planning. We didn't do any planning yet. We just identified, and we are just right now. The change is only what identification and the expectations of the stakeholders. Nothing more. We don't know
So
how much.
this
How much it's gonna
budget
cost.
timelines in
Right.
it.
So we don't know yet, right? We are just identifying the stakeholders at this stage.
Got it.
So that part is going to come, but that is when we actually go into the change management process later on. There's a complete change management process later on. But this is just identification of the changes that we have. Okay. All right. The issue log is if there are any issues. Anybody can tell me what's the difference between an issue and a risk? Anybody has done a risk management before at their work? What is the definition of a risk?
I think issue is something that would not directly impact the project, but still can slow down or can cause problems within the project. A risk is something that can directly impact the performance of the project.
Okay, as per the plan, we have, yeah, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I mean, to me, like issue sounds like something that's already there from the beginning of the project that, it's might impact maybe the execution of the project, but a risk like something that maybe unexpected or might show up later that you have to deal with.
I can, if that's okay. Issue will be something could exist on the way of building the project. That doesn't mean it have a negative impact. It's something could slow us down, something can divert us away or give more resources to do. Risk is something gonna affect the deadlines or affect some of the core aspects of the project. That could be a risk.
Okay. As per the PMBOK, all these definitions are good. As per the PMBOK, we have to have a very clear communication on the very clear definition of the risk and issues. Risk is an event that can impact the project. It can impact the project critically, that it may or may not terminate the project. It may impact the project cost-wise. It may increase or decrease the cost. It may impact the resource-wise, timeline, anything that can impact on the project. But I use the word may or may not. That's why it is called a risk. So as long as, that's why you will hear me saying this word a lot called risk analysis, that when we do the risk management process, where you will have risk and issue log. Why do we keep all risk and issue log together is because we always have risks identified early on in the project. For example, one of the risks would be that what if we have too much rain and we don't have a way to the drain and all that, can add drains and all that, they can handle, the city is ready for this kind of rain or not. That is one of the risks that we have, right? That our sewage system may or may not be capable of handling the excessive rain. That's
could risk also be something that may or may not happen?
That is correct. So risk is something that may or may not happen. It may happen, it may not happen. But issue is the one when risk actually has occurred, then it becomes issue. Then it is called issue. So risk is until it did not happen, but we are anticipating that this may happen sometime. But issue is the one now that risk has actually occurred. That has happened, that event is happening. and then we call it issue. So that's the definition of risks and issues. And what do we do? When we are actually identifying the risks in the beginning of the project, we are actually documenting the risks, and then we are also writing down the mitigation strategy for that. For example, if we are saying that if there is a risk of excessive rain in January or in February 2024, what is our mitigation strategy? Are we ready for that one as a city? And if we are not, then what are the steps we need to do when it happened? That is called mitigation strategy. And then when that rain actually started happening, and you see that, oh yeah, that is not a risk anymore, that is actually happening. So when it is happening, that will become an issue. And when it becomes an issue, what do? You pick up that mitigation strategy we prepared, and you implement that one. And during that time, it is quite possible that you may or may not, that mitigation strategy may or may not work 100%. And you might have to change your course of action a little bit as well in the project. But at least you have a mitigation strategy already defined, discussed, and documented. You got my point?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the definition. That's the difference between risk and issues, even though that's later in the game. But since we have the issue log, and that's why I don't like this term that PMBOK normally use, just the issue log. It's always risk and issue log. Risk and issue log are always together. They have. And then we have a requirement document. Requirement means that these are going to be your additional, for example, your project charter. After the project charter, you might have like initial documentation prepared for the requirement. Those are the ones. Then you have the rest of the things the same as agreements, your enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets, the same documents that you used to prepare a project charter. Then you will be using the same tools and techniques that you prepared or used during project charter to identify who are your stakeholders, with one difference, and that is you are doing data analysis and data representation. That's very important. During this one, you are not only just doing the data gathering and interviews, you are actually doing the data analysis and identifying what are the other systems that we sitting over here while we are preparing this project, we don't know, but they might have impact on our project. One of the brother mentioned example is you are working on a project, and then there is you find out that you need a certain type of permits from the city, and you did not know, so you did not identify them as a stakeholder. That's going to be an issue for you later on. So now that you need to do the data representation and data analysis to identify who are your stakeholders, that's going to be. Got it? So at the end, you will create a stakeholder register. You will have the change request. If that is going to have impact, you have your project management plan is going to just keep on adding and preparing. You will add more documents to your project management plan. And now you have a stakeholder engagement plan as well in there. And you see that over here, it says risk management plan. And as a result of that risk management plan, you will have the complete strategy. What exactly are you going to be doing? One of the things that we do normally in risk management plan is we have our risk management meetings or every monthly meetings. So any project, you have to identify that what is going to be your communication strategy for that. One is that you will, or identification of the risks. It's not just when you are in the beginning of the project and you identify the risks and you say, okay, yeah, that's done. So we did identify the risk as well. When is it possible that during the duration of the life cycle of the project, you will identify more risks? Yes, no, maybe?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So throughout the life cycle of the project, you will be identifying risks. Throughout the life cycle of the project, you will be identifying and identifying when the risk has become an issue and then you will be implementing the risk management or mitigation strategies. And you will be changing your mitigation strategies as well to meet the needs of the project at that time as well. Okay, so remember that all this is a living document. This is always going to happen, but you need to have a risk management plan. One of the things that what we do is we have in most of my projects, I always as part of my project governance, I always have what we call it risk management meetings. So I have a monthly risk management meeting. Every month we meet as overall as a team, and then we identify the risks. And sometime even you don't have to wait for that meeting. People can gonna continue to send you as soon as a risk is identified. Anybody can think of it of a risk. They can send an email to the project manager. Hey, I see this as a big risk for our project. And they can then the project manager has to work with the person and then look at it whether we can do actually the mitigation strategy. What is the mitigation strategy for that? But that is not approved yet. Then you have your own risk management meeting, monthly risk management meeting. During that meeting, you can say, hey, we have one person in the project who has identified this particular risk. This is the mitigation strategy we have come up with, and this is how we are thinking about implementing it. Anybody has any objection, any concern, question, then you discuss it during that meeting, and then either you approve it, you reject it, you amend that one, you update it, or you identify more risks as well.
You here meaning the who do we need to talk to this? Do you think it's important to communicate to the stakeholders too about the risk, or it's very subjective? I mean, it depends
subjective.
on.
Mostly, it's if it's during the execution of the project, the executing phase, and it's not gonna impact the overall cost or the duration of the project, you probably don't have to do it. Some of the risks are just whether we should use .NET technology versus Java technology. That stakeholders may or may not have any say on that one. They may say, you deal with that one with the technology, I don't care. I just need my house to be built. That's it. Right? So that's something. But yeah, if you are choosing something that is gonna have an impact on the stakeholder expectations, yes, you do need to identify and then communicate with them as well.
So if there's a change in, like, let's say the amount of money that's being spent, at that point, I'm guessing that is going to impact the stakeholder. That at that point, it would be involving them.
Yeah, if you are your expectation is that because of this risk that has been identified, we would need extra money or extra time, you might have to go back to the stakeholder and say, hey, we just identified a new risk, and based on that one, we need X amount of dollar or X number of extra months in order for a project to be completed. So that expectation has to be set very clearly. Okay. Now, one of the things that, as I mentioned, we have issue log risk register. I always create one document which is called risk and issue register, which has all those things that I have. That's gonna be what is the name of the risk, what is the likelihood of occurrence of that one, whether it's a high, medium, low. If that happens, who's the person responsible to work on that particular risk? Who are the people who are gonna be working to mitigate that risk, and what is our mitigation strategy for that? So all those things have to be done, and there has to the date this risk is identified, and the date that when this likelihood of this particular risk is occurring. So those are the things that we need to identify in the project. Some of that information is you will be able to identify very easily. One of the things that, since it's just a risk, we don't know whether that risk will ever occur or not, but you can have it's a low, medium, high of likelihood of occurrence of that risk in there. Okay. So that was actually our overall identification of the stakeholders, and then that's complete the initiation process. I will share with you towards the end of this slide deck one sample that I prepared for as a stakeholder registry. Just remind me that at the end of that one I'll identify. Any question on the stakeholder or the initiation process? Okay, moving on to the planning process. The planning process group has 24 different plans. And we are not going to review all 24 of them today. We will just, maybe the first 5 of them we will cover. And then the remaining we would just continue on that one tomorrow, inshallah. The first one is the project management plan. In that one, it's a process of identifying, defining, preparing, and coordinating all plan components and consolidating them into an integrated project management plan. So that's basically one document that you will be preparing. That's like one big document that you will prepare as your the planning document. And one of the key benefit of this process is the production of a comprehensive document that will define the basis for all of your project work and how the project will be performed, who will perform it, and what is the overall timeline for that. That's the project management plan. So the project management plan, sometimes people confuse project management plan with project schedule. So project schedule is just one plan out of 24 maybe in project management plan. So always remember that project schedule is just a schedule. Project management plan consists of all the other things as well. Okay. And in this project management plan, if you look at it, we have, hold on a second. We have project charter, outputs from the other processes, enterprise environmental factors, organizational process assets. What are the things that are in this one, only in the input that we are seeing that we have seen in the previous process as output?
Charter?
Yes, charter and stakeholders. The outputs from the other processes it says, but the other processes as of now, what we have done is we have, if we are right in the beginning of the project, first time we are preparing a project management plan, we have that stakeholders, identification of the stakeholders as well. So those are the things that are going to be. So remember, this project management plan is also used as input to the stakeholders as well in our previous slide. So that gets a little bit confusing, that whether you need a project management plan for identification of the stakeholders or you need a stakeholders to prepare a project management plan. So the answer is it's actually both. So you prepare the project management plan, just a rough, very brief start in the beginning, you will prepare a project management plan. And then you would use that document to start expanding it more and then start creating the project. You will have more identification of the project stakeholders, in which you are also using the charter as well. And then you use that one to actually expand into your project management plan as well. Okay.
How we define conflict management?
Did you say conflict management?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in one of the key item that we earlier discussed, I think there was there you go. When we were preparing the project charter, we had conflict management, interpersonal and team skills. So that's where we do the conflict management. And what exactly do we need to do if we have a conflicting project charter requirements? One person says that I want to have my house to be painted blue. The other one says, no, I want to have my house to be painted pink. So now you have to decide.
So is this comes when multiple stakeholders, we have to work with multiple stakeholders, like some people will be not satisfied what.
Correct. So you have conflicting requirements. The only way you would know is if somebody says that, yeah, then your house has to be painted. Yes, but what color? That is important. So in order for you to define what color it should be painted is based on what you actually have that analysis done and then identify that whether it has to be blue or a pink.
Thank you.
Right?
I had a quick question. So some of this information was already pretty much done on when we were doing the other plan. So it's information just flowing over into this plan.
That is correct. So some of the information is already since that's why I was saying that it's basically the output of the previous process getting into as input to this process. So the project management plan will have a charter, which is basically output of a project charter preparation. From that process is going into the input as this one. As stakeholders, you will be identifying that is also the output of the previous process. It's going in as an input to this process.
What is the purpose of repeating and the information again into this? I mean, why are we doing something twice?
We are not doing anything twice. We just adding on top. So the charter already built. We use that charter to create a project management plan. We are not building something new over here. We are not building the same thing again here. We are just using that charter to identify what are the project management needs, plan needs we have. So that's what we are doing.
What I'm saying is under tools and techniques, if you look at the other plan that we were doing, it's pretty, all the items that we are floating over are the same exact items. Are we adding more to those items in this management plan?
No, the key over here is these are the tools and techniques. These are not the actual document. For example, Microsoft Word is one of the tools.
Yeah, okay.
So you're documenting because you're using Microsoft Word. And then again, in the next process, you're again using Microsoft Word for that. So it's just a tool. So you don't have to, you're not, but type of the document you're preparing earlier was project charter. Now using the same tool, you're building a new document that is project management plan. So that's the difference between the two. But the tools you use is the same. And then the output of this one is going to be project management plan that you have. And remember, this is not 100% complete project management plan. So you will, over the period of time when you're doing your planning, you keep on adding one thing at a time. First, you started with the project charter and the outputs and the other initial projects, the processes. You use the tools and techniques and prepare an initial project plan. And then you start adding more plans onto that one. Communication plans, stakeholders, management, conflict management, all those other plans you will keep on adding here.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the second one is scope management. So what exactly are we doing with the scope is that the process of creating a scope management plan that document how the project and product scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. So now remember the example of building a house that we said. We are building a house, but now we have to identify that how big is going to be the house, how many rooms are going to be there, what exactly are the other details of that one does that house has to have. So overall scope, first we just define the boundary of in the project charter, where we define that what type of house we're going to be building. It's a single family home or it's going to be a condo we are building. Now we know a little bit more detail of the overall scope of this project as well. So we are using our project charter as one of the output from the previous process. Project management plan that we used, we just prepared it, in which we are identifying what is the overall project life cycle description, what is our development approach for this one, what is the quality management for that one. And then we have other organizational processes already defined. And that's we do. One of the things that we do in the scope management is that we are doing data analysis, and in that data analysis, we are doing alternate analysis. Anybody can tell me what is the alternate analysis? So the alternate analysis is the one we use, for example, we define it's going to be a 4-bedroom house, but we don't know how many, whether we're going to have a single-story home or or 2-story home. And then we have both the alternates available. Then we can also define how many rooms do we need to have a 1 bedroom as a guest bedroom downstairs and then the rest of the bedrooms are upstairs, or we want to have all the bedrooms in the upper story. So all those alternates that we have available. So all these different options that we have available. So we are going to do the alternate analysis. And then at the end, we're going to have a scope management plan. So this is, remember, we are doing scope management plan, which means we are defining the scope. This is not a requirement. This is a scope. Scope is basically high level detail. And then we are also defining that how is this scope is going to be changing if there is a change in that one. And then as
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
About alternative analysis. When we are so far ahead in the planning, why do we have to do the alternative analysis? Isn't that waste of time and waste of resources?
No, right now we are just defining the scope. We are not so far ahead in this one. Scope, where first we define the overall project management plan, then we define the scope, and then after defining the scope, we go into the requirement. And scope sometimes even change after you define the requirements.
But we have already made the project management plan, right? Which is a very detailed document.
Project management plan is a very detailed document when we are towards the end of that one. So far, we just defined the very initial beginning level plan, which is called, what we call it, a first cut of the plan. So the first cut plan is a very basic plan, and then we start defining more and more information. We haven't even defined the complete project scope here yet. So scope is one of the things. So again, the project management, there is a difference between two things. One is what is our scope management plan versus what exactly is the scope. Scope management plan means it's telling you overall boundary, overall little bit more details within the project charter, and then it is also telling you what is the structure of the project is going to be going to look like, but it does not have all the nitty-gritty details yet. So it is quite possible that, again, giving you the example that the project charter we defined when we decided to build a house, that we want to build a house. And then when we went into the scope, we know that the scope is that it's a 4-bedroom house we are trying to build. But we don't know yet whether we want to build a single-story home or a 2-story home. That's where we are doing an alternate analysis. So alternate analysis is that's where it is going to be impacted.
Okay, thank you.
Right? Okay. And then the output of this one is going to be scope management plan, where we will define what's the overall scope of the project, who are going to be which stakeholders have a direct impact of that one scope. It may be all of them, or it may be some of them. That will be defined in our RACI chart. We'll have that one. And then also we can have a requirement management plan, which means what is the requirement overall in general, what are the different requirements that we have. And then for each one of those requirements, we always define or what we call it a rationale for that requirement. For example, if you're saying that I want to build a house 4-bedroom, I want to have 1 bedroom downstairs, 3 bedrooms upstairs, what exactly is the rationale behind that? Why not all the bedrooms should be upstairs? Then you need to have a rationale for that. Do you want to have a laundry room or not? Can you put your laundry machines and everything in your garage? Things like that. So those are the different requirements, and then you have a complete requirement management plan defined for that. Okay.
Question. So the change log, is it part of each of these plans, subsequent plans, and they have their separate change logs, or it's part of the main change log that we defined earlier?
So change management is itself is a process. So not these processes may not have a change management, but if you are making any kind of a change throughout these different type of plans when you're making, At that time, if you have any change identified, you have to create a change log, that the one that you created right in the beginning. You add more to that one, just like risk management process. We said that risk keep on identifying. There's a process of identification of a risk, and then mitigation, and then the actions to be taken. The same way you have to do for the change management as well. So change management is going to be a living, breathing process that's going to go throughout the life cycle of the project. Got it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how are we doing the project management plan updates? As I said earlier, we have developed project charter, project management plan we had in the beginning. We defined this, the scope management, and then we update the project management plan again. So this is a project management plan. I told you that we continue to just add more. For example, we created project charter, quality management plan, project lifecycle description, development approach. What approach of the development we are using? Are we going to go with the waterfall approach? We will have one big bang requirement collection, design, development, and then the implementation. Or we're going to go with the smaller chunks and then keep on going in a iterative way, which is also called the agile process. Are we going to go in that process? So that's the development approach for that one. And then we have at enterprise level or organization level, if there are any factors that are impacted. The organization has been bought by another organization. We can use their tools and technologies. Organization is in the process of transforming into a new things. Are there any governing laws that are changing? All those things will impact overall project details as well. Okay.
Quick question, just on the previous slide. So what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, so the plan scope management is basically we're breaking down what we're going to be doing into smaller chunks and then making it. Is that what we're doing in the plan scope management?
No, the scope is basically right now, we are not talking about breaking down into the smaller chunks. We are just talking about defining the scope. So this is the first time we are defining the scope. The scope was not defined before. Right now, this is the first time we are actually defining what's the scope of the project, and then what is the project, the management plan for that one, for the scope, and how do we identify that, who's going to be interviewed, how many interviews are going to be done, what are the tools and techniques we're going to be using to define the scope and the requirement for that. All right, so requirement management plan that we talked about earlier, that we will be creating. Requirement management is collect the requirements. That's the main thing. That's where the most of the time is spent. And then we need to do a lot of analysis on that one. So the process of determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet the objectives. So here, if you look at it, we are looking at two major things. Number one, stakeholders' expectations, their needs, and the objective of the overall project. So these are the two things that you are looking right now. So when you actually start looking at the project management needs, the project needs, which means that why this project is being built, what are the objectives of this one, and then each stakeholder will have its own expectations that you have to look at it. The key benefit of this process is that it provides the basis for defining the product scope and project scope. So project scope and product scope may be different as well. There might be multiple projects within a product. So their scope is going to be defined based on these requirements, this process. How are we doing it? First, we are using the project management plan, project charter, other project documents, which also included the assumptions log that we created earlier. Lesson learned register is, since requirement is not in the beginning of the project, because in the beginning of the project there is no lesson learned. But if we have new requirements that are coming in, as for example, new changes that are coming in, then we can use the lesson learned register that was part of actually our closing process. So we use that one to do more requirement collection as well. Stakeholder register, we prepared earlier as well. The business case, the agreements, enterprise-wide applications, those are the processes that we can use. And then the main thing what we are doing over here, number 2, for example, here mentioned data gathering, and number 3, data analysis. That is the most important. These are the 2 main tools and techniques that we have to use. We have to gather the data, raw data, as we gather from all the stakeholders, subject matter experts, the people who are working on this, who are going to be the end user of this one. And then we have to do the analysis. And that during the analysis, can anybody tell me what is the one major benefit of data analysis that we have, that we do here as part of the requirement gathering? Right. When we do the data analysis, we identify actually the conflicts. So if we have the multiple stakeholders are giving you the requirements, and those requirements may be different from each other, they are conflicting with each other. As I gave you the example of that if the 2 stakeholders say that I want to build a house and then I want to paint it. The other one also says I want to paint it. And then you go into one step further and say what color of the paint you want to have. And then the one person says I want to paint it, the interior or exterior, to be blue, and the other one says it has to be pink. Then that's a conflicting requirement. So you have to then either come to the compromise that, hey, we can have one room for you, painted, or you can have to bring both of them together and then come to one single conclusion that what color of paint you want to have. So those are the things that you need to look at it. Then you do the decision making. And in some cases, that decision making also may require just voting. That you say, okay, we have 5 stakeholders, 2 of them are saying this thing, the 3 of them are saying another thing. So let's go with the majority, whatever is that. So that's one of the things. Another option is multi-criteria decision analysis. So you can have a different type of decision-making processes, different decision-making factors. Those factors has to be weighted, and then you have to look at it, which factor has what weightage, and based on that you can define. And the number 5 is also very important, and that is the data representation. When you are actually doing the requirement analysis, at that time you are defining, not only just defining, but also you are showing it in the form of like different diagrams, mind mapping, and all that as well. And then you can actually define the approaches that you are going to be taking. Because remember that when you are actually talking to the stakeholders may have very broad base. One person could be a very technical, like computer genius, and then the other person might be just a pure business end user. They may not even understand each other's language in terms of about this project, how to use this project. So you have to give them all these analysis, alternate solutions, and say, hey, this is how we're going to be building. So you need to make sure that your document is detailed enough where you can actually show that everything, including the data representation as well. And at the end, when you actually complete this one, you will have requirement documentation. And there is another output that you will prepare, and that is requirement traceability matrix. Anybody has any idea what that document is? Okay, requirement traceability matrix has 2 aspects. Number 1 is that when you are actually defining the requirements, you are also looking at it that where this requirement came from. So you need to have that track. So for example, if you are saying that the house has to be, the walls have to be painted, and then this is the color of the paint, you need to remember that who actually gave you that requirement. Otherwise, it's going to be They may come back and say, who gave you the idea that the house has to be painted red? Nobody said that red, but you mentioned it in your requirement, and then say, oh, okay, sorry, I missed it. It was actually either a pink or a blue, and then I came up with the idea it was red. So that's my bad. So you need to have that traceability. That traceability is backward with your where that the source of that requirement. And then this document is gonna be used later on. So you need to keep this document handy, because this is gonna be the document. Anybody has any idea where it will be used?
Testing.
Exactly, testing. So when you are actually completing your requirement, at that time you're gonna give this requirement traceability matrix to your testing team and say, hey, go test this application. And they're gonna look at it and say, okay, this is the requirement number 1. Yes, I tested it, it's complete. Requirement number 2, I tested this one, this is complete. Also, you will be required all these documents, these requirements to be given to your testing team now in the beginning of the project, so that while you are actually building this whole project, they should also start building their test cases for that. So that's the work in progress, already in parallel it's going to happen. So they will be building a test case for that, and as soon as those test cases are complete, you would know that, okay, now these test cases are already in progress, and by the time you're done with your development of the whole product or your project, and it's ready to be tested, and then they can say, okay, yeah, we have our test cases built. And then unless you have a traceability matrix, you would not know how many test cases are built and whether those test cases are 100% covering all the requirements or not. So that's the traceability matrix is the one that will be used for that. Okay. Now, this is a little bit of a backward that we have defined scope, which is basically we have more onto the as what we discussed earlier as well, the process of developing a detailed description of the project and product. And the requirements are within the scope. So first of all, we have a project charter, very high level. Within that one, we have a scope. Within that one, we have requirement. So this is a little bit of a backward. They have defined it in the book. That's why I went this way. Otherwise, I normally go with the project charter. Then underneath that one is the scope. And underneath that one is the requirement, which is pretty much in the scope as well. That is the same thing that we are doing what we did for a requirement and gathering, but it's a little bit of a higher level. So this pretty much, if you look at it, they're using the same inputs, almost the same outputs that the tools and techniques that we are using. And then the output is that project scope statement, project documents update, which is also assumption log, requirement document, which is a high level requirement, traceability matrix we are also building with as part of this one, and stakeholder register.
So is there any reason why each of those have to be like a separate document? Your assumptions, scope, a lot of them can really be bundled into one document. Like I was actually just putting it all together into a project charter.
Which is okay, which is perfectly fine. So no, the project charter is always very high level. Then the scope and the requirement can be in the same document. You can have a requirement document, what we call it. So the way we normally define is that we define what we call it requirement specification document, RSDs, and then we have a functional specification documents is called FSDs. So FSD is the one I'll come to that one later on. The requirement specification document will have a project scope and then the requirement defined in that one. The scope is a little bit higher level. It also still defines the so charter defines the boundary, scope defines the structure, and then requirements are the actual requirements for each project. That's how I go with that one. And then the functional specification document is basically mostly used in our software development. It may or may not be used in other areas as of now. which is basically the software development. When we prepare that, we define that, okay, this is, you want to have a system that should do this, and this is how it's going to be. We will define the screenshots, we define that this is going to be the opening. Here you go in and you enter your user ID, password. It will take you to this screen, and this screen will look like this. It will have these many buttons, these many links available. These are the input fields, these are the output fields that you define. That's what we call it FSDs, function specification document. But the main thing is right now, so far, what we have looked at it is basically scope and the requirement, and both of them can be in one document. I actually now always prepare as one document for scope and the requirement. Okay. Any other question? Yep. All right. So this is the last one that we will, the process we will study today. And after that, I will give you some of the lab work that we have to do for that one, that you will have to spend some time on that. This is called WBS, is the work breakdown structure. It's basically a process of subdividing projects, deliverables, and project work into smaller, more manageable components. So that's basically when you are dissecting your requirements into smaller, actually piece of work that you have to do, each one of them. So for example, you want to build a house, and within the house you said that I want to build all the rooms and all that as well. Now you have to look at it. What exactly what are the things that I need to do? I need to lay some foundation. So that's foundation is one division of the work. Now I have to build some steel structure. Then I have to put on some plumbing or the pipes and all that as well. So those are basically the smaller components that you identify. And then once your plumbers come in and they'll do their plumbing for all the pipes and everything are already laid on after the foundation, you know that, okay, this is my smaller manageable work. Plumbing work is complete for this one. And then they go, then the other person will come in, and then the other person will do their work. So that's what we call it a work breakdown structure. So define it into more smaller manageable components that you do. The benefit of this process is to provide a framework for what has to be delivered. So you know that there is a foundation needs to be done. You need to build the electrical wiring, you have to be done. Plumbing has to be done. The wood structure has to be defined. So all those things that you are actually defining, that's your work breakdown structure. And for that one, what you need is your project management plan, including your scope management, your scope statements, requirement documents that you have, which is pretty detailed now. Environmental factors are always going to be there that you will use. And then you will need your subject matter expert over here, because you would not know at this stage whether this is good enough, or this is something that you are building it, and then your subject matter expert will tell you that, hey, you don't know that, but this will require X number of other factors as well. So these, for example, one of the brother mentioned earlier that if you are building something and you need a permission from the city, you need some sort of a permit, that's where the subject matter expertise will come in. So you will know that you will have one component of that one is just to get the permit from the city to do that. So those are the things that you do. Once you have your work breakdown structure defined, you will have a complete scope identified with the details that exactly what are the smaller components that needs to be done. You will have your assumption log updated on that one. Requirement, during this whole process, your requirement may be more refined, or you may identify new requirements as well. So those new requirements are going to be added to that one as well. Remember, now we are not changing the scope yet. We are just defining that. But once you have the scope WBS ready, that's where your requirement and your scope of the project is finalized. That's where you baseline your project. Anybody has any idea what is a baselining means? So the baselining is when you, in the beginning, when we remember, we created a project charter and we still have a change log defined. We did not baseline the project then, because we were still defining the project charter, defining the scope of the work, defining what needs to be done. We might have 1,000 ideas in our mind, and then we are adding everything into our project as well. And then we are identifying what is the minimum viable product required. That's the mandatory requirements, and what are the things that we call it a wish list for the project. But here, once we create the WBS, at that time we defined that this is the product that we are trying to build, and then that is the product that you will baseline, and then throughout the life cycle of the project you will consider this as your baseline. So anytime anything that new comes in, you will consider that as a change request. So that change request will have, that's where Brother Khadir, you were mentioning earlier, you were asking about the question that are a new thing comes in, and then whether you will be able to, you should consider that as a part of this project or as an independent new project. That's where all your change management process will kick in, which means that anything new that comes in, you have to add that one as a new requirement into the project. So that's where you will be adding it more and treating it as, so it has its own smaller project, and that has an impact on the overall bigger project to that. Okay. So the project scope baseline is very important. WBS is one of the, as a project manager, whether you go for your job interviews, you go for your project development, any kind of a project that you do, you will have questions about WBS. How do you define the work breakdown structure? What do you do about it? And if you don't know what is a WBS or how to do the WBS, what exactly are the things that we are doing while creating a WBS, it means that you have not ever run a project. So this is the very, very basic component of that one, because that's where the all your scope and everything has been defined, and you have actually baselined that one. If you are using, for example, Microsoft Project, that's just one tool. There are a number of other project management tools that you can use. Microsoft Project is one of them. So we normally, what we do is that once we have a WBS defined in the Microsoft project, that's where we baseline our project. And then we baseline it, and then later on, whenever we make any change to our project, we can always go back and then compare it with the baseline, how much deviation we have done so far in the project. That could be cost, time, or both, or resources as well. Okay, any question? I know we have about 15 minutes left, but anything about the overall planning that you have done so far?
I have a question. You just mentioned at the very end the baseline and the relationship to the resources. Where does the resources get considered in the planning process? At what point? At the scope level, or at the WBS level, or at what level?
So right now we are doing the scope baseline. There are two type of baselines we do. We do project baseline, which will include resources, plans, schedule, and the scope, all three of them. Or we do a scope baseline, basically, which is just defining the scope yet. We have to come to the project planning, the resource planning as well. So resource management is another one of the processes out of those 24 that we will probably cover tomorrow, inshallah. But that is the one that's we will be doing the resource management as well with that. The baseline, when we can define normally as a project baseline, and project baseline will include scope, resources, and schedule, all three of them.
And cost as well, probably?
Yeah, so when we say scope and resources, every resource will have a cost associated with that. So when I say cost, resources, also means the cost as well with that one. But cost is not really baseline. There is a budget that is baseline. Cost is just is gonna go with the resources that we're gonna be using. Okay. All right. Now, here is the homework that you have to do. I will be sending you tonight, hopefully, the list of your the things that some of the basically I'll be sending you one thing, and that is your some of the mock test sites. You should at least try one or two of them, the mock test, and then I'll see if we can do only for the mock test for these chapters that we covered, or which is initiation and part of the planning. I want to do actually a initiation and planning both complete before we actually do the mock test, but you should start doing the mock test as well on that one. On the other hand, one of the things that practically that I want you to do is you have to define the project charter that we covered, identify who are the stakeholders. We have to prepare that one. High level project management plan has to be created. Then scope management plan also needs to be defined, and start defining your requirements. So that, remember, I gave you the example of all these projects. You need to start writing your all these things. You need to define what the scope is and then create a WBS for that. It may not be perfect. It may be just 2 or 3 pages total right now, but this will basically give you an idea that how the overall project management plan structure we are going to be building. Yes, Vasalbhai, you have your hand raised.
Yes, so this homework, is this still related to the one that we did, we have been working on, or is that a new project we're gonna do?
No, I told you right in the beginning that identify, first of all, gather your thoughts, build a team, and then start working on a project. And that project is gonna go throughout till the end of this training. So I don't want you to create something new. It's the same project that you identified earlier. Just define these things in your project now.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yes, Jamal.
Yes. Are there any templates or formats that you recommend we follow?
I can actually share with you some of those. Not necessarily you have to use only those. You can use any of those, but I'm more focused on less focused on the templates or the details that you're putting, but I'm more focused on the concept. If you have a clear concept, then and the detail level that you're put in, that's more important. So I don't want you to be stuck on the template itself, but I will share some templates with you as well.
Maybe a template will be a good starting point for us. Like if you could, yeah.
Yep, I'll share the templates.
Are you gonna have some time to review the individual projects with people who are working on them together?
We will be, yeah, we need to set aside some time just to review some of those projects and see what are the things you're doing, and then individually I can just give you some suggestions that what are the things that are going right, the other things that you can add to this one. If something you missed, I'll share that. We need to set aside some time to do that. But this is just the WBS is just the beginning. So I want your project to be initial definition of that one until the WBS you create. And then the second one is the project schedule. Once you have these two together, that's where I will review your project.
Can we do that today or not?
No, we're not doing it today. You have to do it. I mean, you tell me this one. I'm hoping that we by next week, next Saturday, you should have all these things defined, and including the project plan as well that we're going to be reviewing tomorrow. We'll cover the remaining 20 processes inshallah tomorrow. Then you will be in a position to actually prepare all these plans. Okay. All right. So I told you that earlier that I have template. So one of the template that I can share with you, for example, this is my stakeholder registry that I use. I just intentionally I remove the names from here. So if you look at it, these are my stakeholder name, title, what function they are doing, influence, whether they have a high influence, medium or low influence they have, level of interest that they have, what is their engagement level. For example, are they leading the project? They are right now supportive of the project, They are just working as an SME on that project. So we do that. Then whether they are the approver of the project or not. So they could be an approver, or they may not be an approver of the project. And then once we have this was actually the one of my project that was mostly an assessment project. So if you finish that project, and then whether they will be recipients of this assessment report or not. And then we also said that stakeholder reporting, which means that which stakeholders actually needed to be reported on a regular basis, which we are not. So all that is defining this. So this is one of the template I used for one of my project. You are more than welcome to use this template, or create a simple template like this one and create it.
A question for the influence, level of interest, engagement. I mean, just generally speaking, are there PMP guidelines in terms of what the values are, or are these kind of values determined kind of on a portfolio project level, or
Sorry.
based on the organization needs,
question?
environment?
PMP guideline for what?
Values or ranges, hot, medium, or high, medium, low, looking at the influence column, level of interest column.
No,
How
PMP
are those defined?
PMPOC doesn't go into that level of detail, whether you want to call it influence or not. This is just one of the template I use with you. Well, most of the projects won't even have this much detail, that whether influence column may or may not be even exist in that one. But I normally go with my projects to this level. From time to time, when I'm sharing these templates with you, these are my templates that I have used in my real life projects. You don't necessarily have to go to that level of detail, but I'm just showing you in the actual project management world how we are actually doing this work. So those are the things that we are using. You can use the influence or high, medium, low, or you don't even have to use that one. So it's up to you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Gurpreet, a question. So you shared this one template. So the task you have just specified there, do we need to create each template for each of those tasks, or we combine into one?
I intentionally don't send you all these templates, because then you will be stuck on the templates. As I said, that these templates are just the guidelines, not necessarily you have to use. But I can share with you for initially what the project charter will look like, how the project charter would look like, and how the other things are. For example, project management plan, what type of a plan we prepared. So I'll see if I can use it. As earlier, even Faisal Bhai mentioned that you can even use Chat GPT for that one. You can use that as well. They have those as well. But I can share with you if you want.
Yeah, I really
Share
appreciate
all of them, but I
if
can share some of them.
yeah, if you can share, right, just to build. I mean, just to get an initial better understanding. Of course, we get that that's right. We can
Sure.
change for the future. Yep.
Just
Thank you.
remember, when I share with you the templates, these templates are again should be used as templates, not necessarily these are the requirements. But though that can give you an idea that what are the level of details we normally go in when we prepare or plan for a project.
Got it. Jazakallah.
Okay. All right. This is it for today that I have prepared. And I know we are right on time. Actually, it's 3 minutes before 4 o'clock. We have a other time. So inshallah, we'll continue tomorrow from in the planning phase that we are. We completed. I intentionally stopped at WBS because I know there's a lot to grasp in this one. Prepare your charter and other documents as well. I will share. I have to actually not immediately right now, but maybe later in the evening I'll share with you the templates that I have. I'll just have to clean up some of my templates because some of them may have confidential or proprietary information. So I just need to clean up and then send it to you as a template.
So when are you planning to send that?
I'll send it to you tonight. It may be a little bit late, but I will send it to you.
And also this PDF files, right? PDF.
Yeah, and the copy of this one. But this is gonna continue tomorrow as well with the rest of the processes for planning.
And
Sure.
Gulbhai, like when will you share the book, the link to the book, because I forgot to download.
You can still go to the same one, and I request it. I will give you the right. I think whenever I gave you the right already, so you just go and
Okay,
see.
sure. Okay, let me try that.
And also for tomorrow, Rubai, can you make your joining list by default rather than you have to accept it?
Sure, I'll look into it if I can change that.
Tomorrow, so are you gonna ask us to present what we done so
No.
far, or no?
Next week. Tomorrow,
Next week.
I'm not expecting you to have everything ready by tomorrow. I
Okay.
will share these templates, and if I share these templates and everything tonight with you, I mean, if you're a superhuman good, you can do it everything by tomorrow. But that's not the expectation. Faisal bhai, you are the Superman, not everyone.
No. I just wanted to make sure, because I think it was from the last meeting. I think we decided that you'll be given 5 minutes to present on Sunday on the homework
Yeah,
that was assigned last week. So I'm just
there
getting
was
clarification. Yeah.
there was the first 5 minutes only was to share the idea what type of a
Okay.
project.
So are we doing that tomorrow?
No, we are not doing it that
Okay.
tomorrow. We did it this morning, earlier when we started
Oh,
this
okay. Nice.
today, but tomorrow I'm just expecting that you go over. We will go over the rest of the planning phase, and by the time we are done, by end of day tomorrow, inshallah, the rest of the planning, then you have for 1 full week to work on that one, and then I will add more things in addition to the work breakdown structure to this, and then you will have to do this. Okay, then you can create that.
Great. Thank you. Jazakallah khair, Gulbhai.
So,
Very much, everyone.
Gulbhai, so just to wrap up a few things, I want to make sure what you are saying, the recording will be shared, the slideware will be shared, then you
I
will
will
be
share
sharing
this.
templates.
Hopefully today I will have access to recording right away. So I'll share tonight the slide deck as well as the recording.
And the templates, and you said something we have to remind you later to share.
I
Was that
already did
covered?
that.
Okay.
I already did share the template. That's the one for stakeholder registry.
Okay.
Gulbhai, can you please add me on your mailing list? I am not getting any of your emails.
Oh. And somehow my inbox doesn't like you.
Yeah.
I tried adding you twice. I will do it again. I tried doing it again, I think.
Regarding the request for the book, I sent the request as well. I think I'll probably get it sometime today then.
I sent you that as so the request that you to add to my email list.
No, to access the book.
Oh yes, once you send it to me, I will have it, and I'll check that after this call to see how many requests I have, and I will add it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
Brother Gul, thanks for your patience with all these housekeeping items. Will you also be able to share last week's recording
I
today?
am trying to get hold, brother. I'm trying my best to get hold of last week because that was not in my control. That was MCF has it, so I'm still trying to get hold of that. As soon as I get that, I'll share that one. But today's recording, I will have access. I'll send it to you. Last week, as soon as I get that one, I'll share it with you.
Okay.
Brother, for the last week recording, you would probably have it on the same link for the shared YouTube link.
Yeah.
So you'll have it there. Excuse me. And a good proposal for sharing, if you can, Brother Gul, have a Google Drive folder.
Yeah, that's what
where
I'm
you
trying.
can
I
upload
already have
everything
it.
and then share the link.
Yeah, I have a Google Drive. That's where I shared books. So I'm trying to do that same thing over there.
Yeah, and it will include those recording. Yeah, okay.
That's what I said, that I don't have access to the last week's recording yet, but if it's available through YouTube, that's good. If not, then I think we had it on a SD card. I'm still trying to get hold of that SD card. Yeah. All right, brother. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.